Story 1. When I was 13, my friends and I had a weekly tradition: Saturday night ding-dong ditch. We lived on the same street in a quiet suburban neighborhood. Back then, there were fewer houses and a lot more woods. For us, it was the perfect playground. I'll call my friends Mark, James, and Matt for this story. Usually, Mark and James were the bold ones who ran up to the doors, rang the bell, and sprinted away. Matt and I preferred the shadows. We'd find hiding spots before they even reached the porch. That night, we hit maybe 5 or 6 houses. Most of the guys who opened the doors gave the same reaction: step outside, yell something, and go back in. Some of them we hit twice just to get a better reaction. One man even threatened to call the cops, so we took that as our cue to move to the next block over. Now, this next block was different. It had fewer houses and more trees, patches of woods that hadn't yet been developed. The homes here looked older, a little more run down. The first one we picked sat right across from a thick patch of woods, perfect for us to hide in. The house itself looked off. Tall grass, a car in the driveway covered by a ripped tarp, and a mailbox barely hanging on. Still, Mark, ever the daredevil, went up and rang the bell. He barely made it across the street before the front door swung open. A huge man stepped out, easily 6 feet tall, wide build, and immediately furious. Unlike the others, he didn't just glance around and go back inside. He stormed across his yard, checked the bushes, screamed threats into the night. We thought it was hilarious. Eventually, he gave up and went back inside. Mark waited a few minutes, then, unbelievably, crept back up to ring the bell again. This time, the door opened almost instantly, and this time, the man had a rifle. We froze in the woods, watching him scour his yard, more aggressively now. He checked new spots, behind his car, behind trees, then walked to the middle of his lawn and just stood there, silent, thinking. Then, he turned and looked straight at us. We ducked behind bushes, holding our breath. For 10 long seconds, he stared into the woods, right at us. Then he slowly went back inside. But we weren't safe yet. We saw him reappear in the window, just standing there like a statue, still watching the woods. He didn't blink. He didn't move. It was like he knew we were there. Meanwhile, Mark, who hadn't learned his lesson, was sneaking back to the door again. We couldn't yell, we couldn't move, we were paralyzed. Mark rang the bell a 3rd time and ran. The man didn't move, not right away. He stayed still in the window for another minute before walking away. Then, silence, until we heard it. Run. It was Mark shouting from across the street. We didn't understand until we heard twigs snapping behind us. We turned, and there he was. We ran. No plan, no direction, just pure instinct, like prey running from a predator. Mark was waving at us across the street, and together we bolted through block after block until we were sure we'd lost him. Later, Mark told us he saw the man sneak out the side of his house and head straight into the woods, hunting us. He only yelled when he saw the man raise his rifle. We never reported it, never told our parents, just a few friends at school. We never ding-dong ditched that house again. In fact, we avoided that entire block. Because sometimes, the people behind those doors aren't just annoyed, they're dangerous. When I was in college, my parents got me a small house to live in near campus. I know, spoiled, right? But it wasn't anything luxurious, just a modest place, nothing fancy. And at first, I loved it. But that didn't last long. A few days in, weird things started happening. It was a rainy Saturday, one of those gray, lazy days. I had nothing to do, so I was sprawled on the couch, just watching TV. That's when I heard it, a sharp scrape across the living room floor. I paused, thinking maybe a squirrel or something had gotten in. But after looking around and finding nothing, I brushed it off and went back to watching TV. That was the first warning sign. The rain kept falling all day and into the night. I didn't go out, just stayed glued to the TV, cozy on the couch, until I heard a sound from the kitchen. It wasn't loud, but it was enough to grab my attention. I grabbed a pillow, a pillow, and tiptoed over to the kitchen doorway like I was about to confront a burglar with a feather. What I saw chilled me. A box of Cheerios dumped in the middle of the floor, cereal scattered everywhere. No windows were open, no pets, no logical explanation. I dropped the pillow and started cleaning, trying to laugh it off. But while I was on the floor, I heard it. A creak, like someone had just stepped on an old wooden plank, near the kitchen table. I looked up. No one was there. At this point, I told myself I was just being paranoid. I cleaned up the cereal, sat back down, and focused on the TV. Outside, thunder rolled across the sky, and oddly, I found the storm relaxing. That was the last moment I remember before dozing off. I woke up about an hour later. The TV was still on, but that's not what woke me. It was a bang, a thud, somewhere downstairs. I didn't bother investigating. I shut the TV off and went straight up to bed. The next 2 days, completely normal. But then came another rainy day, and with it, something worse. I woke up feeling like death, like I'd been out drinking all night, even though I hadn't touched a drop. My head throbbed, I felt nauseous, and I could barely move. The weather outside was gray and heavy, and I barely left my bed. I kept the bedroom TV on for background noise and left a trash bin beside me in case I had to puke. Sometime around noon, I muted the TV because I heard something from above me, in the attic. The attic door was in my room, and most of the attic stretched directly over it. I heard 3 or 4 distinct sounds. Not raccoons or mice, something heavier. Steps. Despite how sick I felt, I pulled the attic string down and grabbed my old baseball bat. I climbed the steps slowly and flicked the light switch on. Nothing. Just some dusty boxes, probably left behind by the last owner. Still dizzy and sick, I grabbed the bat again, yanked down the attic stairs, and climbed up. This time, I was angry. I screamed into the darkness, trying to sound tough. But before I could pull the light cord, I heard it. A child, giggling. In the pitch black of the attic, that sound, it didn't belong there. It didn't belong anywhere. My entire body felt cold. My stomach dropped like I was falling. It wasn't just fear, it was pure terror. I can't describe the feeling. It was like something ancient had locked eyes with me. I don't even remember getting out of that house. I just remember calling my dad in the rain, begging him to pick me up. When he arrived, I tried to explain. He could see how shaken I was. My parents didn't say much, but I think, deep down, they believed me. The next morning, we packed everything. I never spent another night in that house. To this day, I know what I felt in there wasn't in my head. That house was wrong, and I'm convinced something was living in that attic. When I was 20, I took a temporary job working as a maid for an elderly woman named Mel. She lived alone in this massive, rundown house, the kind of place that could have been beautiful if it weren't so neglected. The property had 2 acres of land, surrounded by thick woods on 3 sides and an empty road on the other. The house itself was ancient, mostly wood, creaky floors, and shadows that never seemed to leave. Mel kept most of the blinds shut, and even when I opened them to let in sunlight, they'd be closed again the next time I walked by. Some rooms were lit only by candles, which made the place feel prehistoric. Mel was around 70, quiet, and just a little off. She didn't talk much. She just gave me tasks: sweeping, dusting, laundry, sorting mail, things she couldn't physically do anymore. One Friday, she asked me to spend the night. She had plenty of rooms, 4 bedrooms for just 1 person, so I agreed. I packed a small bag and arrived that evening. As usual, she barely said a word. I dropped my backpack in the guest room and turned around, and there she was, standing silently in the doorway, No greeting, no smile, just instructions. Clean this room first, then tidy up the rest of the house. Then she disappeared upstairs. I didn't see her again for the rest of the day, though I heard her pacing around upstairs. Constant footsteps, back and forth, back and forth. There were no TVs in the house, no radio, no music, just footsteps. One thing Mel had made crystal clear: the basement was off limits. She said it multiple times, that I was never to go down there, ever. That night, I went to bed early. This was before smartphones, so I didn't know the exact time, maybe 9 or 10. The bed was uncomfortable, and the house was dead silent, except for the occasional creak of old wood. Then, around midnight, I heard footsteps. Slow, heavy, right outside my door. I figured maybe Mel was going to the bathroom, but the footsteps stopped right in front of my room. I sat up and held my breath. The floor creaked softly, like someone was just standing there. Then she walked away, and I heard a door open downstairs. A few minutes later, it closed again. Then, heavy steps coming up the stairs. Once again, they stopped at my door. And then, the doorknob started to turn. I laid down quickly, pretending to be asleep. The door opened. I heard a few steps, and then she walked away. Her door closed upstairs. At that point, I was completely creeped out. I waited about 30 minutes. My heart was pounding, but curiosity, or maybe fear, got the best of me. I had to know what was in the basement. I slipped out of bed, crept downstairs, and opened the heavy basement door. I flipped on the light and stepped down slowly. And what I saw at the bottom made my blood run cold. 2 old wooden chairs, 2 human figures sitting in them, 2 rotting corpses. They were dressed, wearing wigs. One even had a beret on. Bugs were crawling on them. Their skin was discolored, sunken. I felt my stomach twist, like I was going to throw up. I walked a little closer, needing to confirm they were real. They were. That's when I heard it. Footsteps. Upstairs, right above me. I panicked. There was no time to turn off the light. I dropped to the floor and crawled behind an old couch just as the basement door creaked open. I heard her descending, one step at a time. Slow, deliberate. The creaking got louder, until I heard her reach the floor. Then, in the dim yellow light, she whispered my name. I peeked out from behind the couch and saw her, Mel, halfway across the basement, holding a large kitchen knife, smiling. I didn't wait. I bolted up the stairs. She screamed my name and followed, but she was too slow. I ran to the guest room, grabbed my backpack, and sprinted for the front door. As I fumbled with the lock, I looked back. She was at the top of the basement stairs, still holding the knife, still smiling. I burst out of the house and ran to my car. I started it, breathing hard, and looked back one last time. Mel was standing in the doorway, just watching me. I drove off into the night and never looked back. I never gave her my phone number, my address, nothing. She had no way of finding me. To this day, I don't know who those bodies were. One of them? Probably her husband. She'd mentioned him once or twice. The other? I don't want to know. All I know is something was deeply wrong with that woman, and I came way too close to joining the others in the basement. Please, don't forget to like and subscribe. And remember, the darkness is always surrounding us, just waiting for a chance. Thanks for watched. See you next story.